Our world is a dumpster fire, so might as well play a game about it. What's up, gang? Welcome to Room and Board. My name's Chris George, and today we are taking a look at a Kickstarter preview of Peak Oil Profiteer by Two Tomatoes Games. You'll see I have a copy of it right here. Right here. This is the third in the Peak Oil series, but if you've never heard of the series, like me, don't worry, you don't need to know anything about it to enjoy this one. Peak Oil Profiteer is a delightfully satirical game about ripping as much profit from a war-torn country as you can before the country reaches 100% corruption and implodes upon itself like a dying star. It's a game of bribing political leaders away from your friends, selling oil and weapons to the highest bidder, and putting your face and shoes on those horrible, faceless and shoeless corporations that are single-handedly destroying our world and ruining everything good that's in it. Sounds fun, right? Well, it is. Because this is a preview of the game, I'm going to go through the mechanics and rules in a little bit more detail than I might usually, but as always, timestamps will be below if you want to just skip to the review and have me tell you what to think about it, so you don't have to worry about that yourself. At the beginning of the game, each player chooses a corporation or color and gets their stuff. 5 action cards, 2 drilling rights pawns, $5 million, and a player reference card of your color. Players also receive a random leader token. This represents a politician that your corporation has already in their back pocket from one of the 3 factions. The government, brown, the National Liberation Front, blue, and the URF-MF, the guerrilla type faction. But I like to call them by their actual name, the URF-MRF. The goal of the game is simple: have the most money when the corruption track hits 100%. You can see here that it starts at 93. So things are already pretty bad when you show up. They can't blame you for pushing things over the edge for a small profit, now can they? You're also going to set up this contingency deck in a way that makes the events, which will move the corruption track, evenly distributed, with 3 in the top half, 3 in the bottom, and 1 in the middle. The rest of the cards will be consultants, that will give you special powers throughout the game. The gameplay is fast and simple. Flip up a card from the contingency deck. If it's an action, do what it says. If not, don't worry about it. You can get it later. Then everyone selects an action card from their hand and places it face down in front of them. Once everyone's chosen their card, first the 1s flip and do their action. Then the 2s flip and do their action. Once everybody's done their actions, the round's over, flip up a new card, do it all over again. That's pretty much it. So let's go through the actions in a little bit more detail. Action card number 1. Networking, aka evil corporation speak for bribery and blackmail. First, you draw a blackmail card, which can be used to get a specific leader under your thumb. I'll talk about that more later. And next, you can bribe a leader onto your side, even if they're already controlled by somebody else. Because money is power, baby. Depending on the number of troops, aka the little cubes a faction has on the board, the cost for various actions will differ. So you'll consult your handy-dandy evil corporation almanac and see how much it costs to bribe a leader of a certain color. At the beginning of the game, we can see that each leader costs $2 or 2 million, but I'm just going to keep calling it $2, which you have to pay to the bank. However, if you're bribing someone away from your friends, you also have to pay them the same amount you paid to the bank. Because networking ain't cheap. Next, action number 2, sell weapons. In order to sell weapons, you need to have some sort of leader that you can sell weapons to. Makes sense, right? If you do, you can take this action. Consult your evil corporation almanac and see how much money you're going to get for selling those weapons. They'll then take your nice new shiny weapons and send more troops on the board. First, spawning in a location that they already control, and then rolling a dice to determine where they move. If they encounter a rival faction, everybody dies. But you still get paid, so guess you'll sell them better weapons next time. Action number 3, buy drilling rights. Again, if you have a leader in your back pocket, they can take care of the paperwork and give you the drilling rights to a land which they have under their control. But they're not going to do it for free. Unless, of course, they're the political leader, aka sunglasses guy, who can give you whatever drilling rights he wants for free. You put one of your pawns onto that faction's location, pay the price if you needed to, and this gives you the rights to sell oil later on. If you pick action number 4, sell oil. Following the pipelines from your oil rig, you can choose which port to sell at. Once again, consulting our evil corporate almanac to see whose port is going to pay you the most for it. But it's not as simple as that. If the port that you're selling to is unmanned, or if your rig no longer has protections from any sorts of troop, the oil's going to sell for less. Probably because it gets lost, or it gets stolen, or it takes longer. If it's protected at both ends of the chain, great, you get the full price from the port. Unless, of course, another player has a military leader of that port, because then they get to steal 10 million from you. So make sure to time your selling wisely. And finally, action number 5, the contingency plan. This is how you get mercenaries, or activate the current event. Also, in the case that you choose an action and can no longer do it based upon things that happened on the board, you automatically get to take this action instead, which is great. So those are the 5 actions. Keep in mind that if you and another player choose the same action, the order is determined by the back of the contingency deck. In addition, remember how we talked about blackmail cards? Well, at the beginning of your turn, regardless of what action you take, you can play a blackmail card from your hand to take that leader from someone else. The only way to stop that is if your opponent also has a blackmail card on that person, because then they just stay where they are. Or instead of blackmailing, you can invoke the power of religion, which cannot be stopped. And your religious leader, which is the beard leader, will basically just assume the position of political or military leader, your choice. As for the other player's leader, well, they go and live in a farm upstate and are very, very happy. But that's pretty much it. You can try it out right now on Tabletopia, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I will be happy to answer all of them. Every single one. I guess I should have made that peak oil question specific. Too late now. There are a few little closet cases, of course, that I didn't talk about, so be sure to read through the rulebook a bit before playing a game. So, enough about the rules. Let's get into it. Right off the bat, let me say that I think this game is great. It is. I played it at the 2-player count, 3-player count, and 4-player count, and I enjoyed all of them. I definitely would recommend it more at the 3 to 4 player count. It still works at the 2-player count when you're craving it, but I wouldn't recommend getting it if you're only planning on playing with 2 players. And that's because this game is its most fun when there's a lot going on and multiple actions are happening. When you try to disrupt someone's plans only to have your own plan immediately foiled as well. With 2 players, we generally stayed in our lane and just tried to optimize our money engines the most effectively. But with 3 to 4 players, it becomes this chaotic, regulated, every man for himself free-for-all. And the more players you have, the more likely it is that some other player's actions is going to have a ripple effect that affects your own, which is fun. Maybe they sell weapons to a rival faction who moves in and kills the people who are protecting your oil, meaning when you sell oil on that turn, because sell weapons happens first, you can only sell it for 15 instead of the big 35 that you were hoping for. And maybe before that, somebody else bribes the military leader of the only port that you can sell it to, so they end up getting 10, and you end up netting just $5. It's these dynamic shifts of power that can happen all at the same turn that make it really fun and exciting. It's fun when you do it to someone else, and it's fun when it happens to you, and you can shake your fist at a cloud in anger. And that's because it never really feels that mean. When I first read the rulebook, I thought that this was going to be a combination of Mission Red Planet and Tammany Hall, which is one of the meanest area control games I've ever played. But after playing it these multiple times, it's more like Mission Red Planet and Power Grid had this beautiful, corrupt baby. Because while a lot of chaos can happen on the board, everybody is still angling for their own little slice of power. I think at its heart, it's an economic optimization style of game. Because ultimately, whoever has the most money wins. That's it. It's just that if you don't carefully predict what your opponents might do, all of your plans might go out the windy. And that helps give it a bunch of interaction rather than it feeling like a sort of solo math problem, as some games can. In terms of the interaction, I was actually expecting a little bit more outside of the board, by which I mean making deals with other players and then breaking them. You are, after all, soulless corporations that are consistently trying to squeeze money out of anything that will give you a profit. And I was really expecting that at times your interests would align with other players and you could both do actions that would be mutually beneficial. But that's not really the case. And maybe it's because I only played it online versus in person, but the other players generally serve as obstacles that you have to predict rather than potential allies. And honestly, this keeps the game moving along at a quick pace because you don't have idiots like me talking people's ears off, turning a 15-minute game into a 2-hour game, just trying to make a deal. Most often, you're just going to take the move that's best for you and can screw over as many people at the table. Which, I guess in a way, makes more thematic sense since your only allegiance should be to your own crappy company and not to someone else's miserable company. And now the theme is something that I was a little concerned about when reading about the game. I didn't know if I would have fun pretending to be this corporation that's basically trashing a country and inciting violence for its own personal gain, because we tend to get enough of that in our real world. However, I'm fine with the theme for 2 reasons. One, because the rulebook is wonderful at conveying the satirical nature of this game and frames it more as a dark comedy rather than consistently reminding you of human rights violations. And 2, the theme never really matters that much when you're playing it. This isn't This War of Mine. This is a fun, light, economic puzzle. And while there are thematic reasons behind all of the mechanics, which is great, it's the mechanics and the economics of the game that make it fast-paced and fun. My friend Zach, whom I played this with a few times, really likes to lean into themes anytime there's a possible theme and really try to feel like a villain. A horrible, horrible person. But you don't ever really get that sort of narrative or story by the end of it. It's just a question of who's got the most money? All right, there we go. And I suppose that leads into my biggest issue with the game, and it's that there doesn't ever really feel like there's a dramatic conclusion. The end can kind of come out of nowhere, and this will probably happen consistently, almost every single time. The gaps in money are usually pretty wide throughout the game because you get so much money for selling oil, so you'll have these large gaps that constantly swing back and forth. And when you draw an event card that brings the corruption level to 99, there's often someone who's significantly ahead and can just trigger the end of the game, because the game ends on the same round at which 100% corruption is reached. And there's no real way of stopping them from triggering it or extending the game, so the last moves often feel a little predetermined and like, why bother? Although we did have a very exciting ending in our 4-player game that I recorded a playthrough of. There'll be a link to that in the description below if you want to see us run through it, asking lots of questions and kind of going through step by step. That end was particularly memorable because it came down to this exciting showdown. But in all the other games that I played, it was kind of like flip up the card and okay, guess that's the end. This person wins. Don't even bother taking that last turn. You're just done. And while I can see that as you play and get more experience, this ending won't come as such a surprise, and you'll be able to more accurately estimate when it's going to end, it was still a little bit of a letdown to have that sort of conclusion because the rest of the game is so dynamic. And I was hoping that the ending would be a little bit more like that as well. For almost everyone that I played with, the resounding feedback was, the first game, it took them a while to feel like they could develop strategies, but everybody almost wanted to immediately play it again. And that's because it's so quick, especially when everybody knows how to play the game and what they're doing. You only ever have 5 actions. You can plan for the future, but you're never overwhelmed with choice because usually only a couple of them will be what you're deciding about. I am so impressed with the length of this game because it feels like a 2+ hour experience when really it's 45 minutes. Usually estimations on the box are garbage, time estimations, but I think this one's right on the money with the 30 to 90 minutes. Once you know how to play, I don't see it ever really taking you more than 90 minutes because it is so dynamic and fast. And finally, we have the price point. It's 30 euros on Kickstarter, which is about $44 Canadian or 37 US. At that price point, it's almost a no-brainer to back because you are getting one heck of a solid game. Even just the base game. If you're tired of Kickstarter bloat, This is as streamlined as they come. But with the previous Peak Oil campaign raising around 74K, I am hopeful that we're going to unlock some stretch goals, which the ones that I know about look really exciting. There's a mini expansion, there's a solo mode, which I don't really care about, but then there's also an alternate map, which I don't think you need. I think whenever alternate maps are presented, we automatically think, oh, the game isn't replayable with just the one board. But I think enough dynamic power shifts will happen on this board that you can have a different game each time. That being said, I'm excited for a new map because I'm envisioning the possibilities of if things were rearranged. Just makes for potentially different scenarios. So all that being said, should you back it? Well, like anything, that depends, right? For me, I'm sure you know, I am excited to have this into my collection. I really like Mission Red Planet and I love Power Grid, and I was really excited to find that sort of similar experience in this. If you like economic games or action selection games with some area control, very Mission Red Planet, and you think what I talked about sounds neat, then I would absolutely recommend backing it. I think it's great value for the quality of game that you're getting. And I think it's got a lot of replayability. But don't take my word for it, you can also try it out on Tabletopia for free, which I also think is great, because so many of these Kickstarters, they have a tabletop simulator version, but they never have a Tabletopia version, which is free to everyone. And you know me, I like free, and I like accessible. I would recommend it with 3 or more players. If you play primarily with 2 players, I'd take a pass on it. I think I'll still play it at 2, but I'll only play it with another Peak Oil fan, and I'll only play it if the 2 of us really wanted to play Peak Oil and we didn't have a 3rd player to play with. You know, when you get that craving for it. I don't really play solo games, and I haven't played this solo, because I don't think I'm the right person to comment on whether or not it's exciting in that regard. And also, like I said, if having a dramatic conclusion or overarching narrative is important in your games, this is definitely not that. But if you like Euros with a smidge of war and a dash of bribery, then check this one out. I'm excited. Now, I don't necessarily like ascribing numerical ratings to games because really, what's the difference between a 4 and a 4.25 and a 4.5, right? But Two Tomatoes wanted a rating out of 5 oil barrels to go along with a quote onto their Kickstarter page. And so I'll tell you, I've played some games of this that felt like a 4. I've played some games that felt like a 4.5. My 2-player game, I'd probably rate that a 3.5. But it was also the first time that I tried it, and I did notice a decidedly better reception to people who played the game more than once. Probably because the strategy opens up and new avenues reveal themselves, and it doesn't seem quite so simple, cut and dry as it may first appear. But so in giving it a definitive numerical rating, what I've landed on is this. I had a great time playing it, and I am actively looking forward to playing it again. For me, this isn't a game that's going to come in the mail that I put on the shelf and don't play for a couple of months. I'm probably going to get it and bring it to the very next game night. Partly because I want to get it to the table, but partly because it's also so quick. And I feel like it's going to be easy to get to the table and to bang out a quick game of this and feel like you've had a bigger economic experience. And so it's with that in mind that I give it a 4.5 out of 5 oil barrels, because I really do think everyone should check this out and decide for yourself. The main thing stopping it from getting to that sort of 5 out of 5 status is that abrupt ending, because it's really abrupt. But hey, maybe that leaves you wanting more and gets you playing it again. Anyway, that's it for me. Check it out on Kickstarter right now, June 15th. Smash that like button. Destroy your computer punching that subscribe button. It helps a lot and I'd be grateful. And I will see you in the next video once you're done cleaning up all of that broken glass. Once again, my name's Chris George and I don't have a catchphrase. But if you give me one in the comments, I might use it in my next video. I don't know. What's that? Alex, we should click that one. That's pretty... Okay, I'm sorry. Bye!